Mapping out your attack surface, really deciding network diagrams, et cetera, but also figuring out what's the most important aspects of your network. What's going to hurt the most when they get access, and how do we protect that and prioritize that over others is really what it talks about. And because we keep adding new devices, that attack surface visibility is required. We must be looking, we must be aware, we must be watching for these things so that we can minimize the vulnerabilities. We can patch, we can update, because we know we have to. So those of you who did not decide to buy patching for whatever system you're using, go back and see if you can do that. See if you can add the patching in and get the updates, because you're going to need that. We need to do it moving forward, both on the awareness and the training side, but in the everyday piece. We also have to look at things like low trust and zero trust, and moving into the assumption that everything should be protected and access should be limited to those who need it. And when I say everything should be protected, it's regardless of location. So that if somebody were to VPN in, they then have to re-authenticate. That would have caused so many attacks to fail, because they simply didn't have to. And then we would see it when they fail on those attempts, right? Even if they were able to compromise somebody's credentials, just that extra step really means a lot. So being aware of it is important. And when we look at threat intelligence, there's a lot of data out there. In fact, there's too much. And we talked about alert fatigue and other things. What we're talking about here is how do we integrate the best of that data while eliminating all the false positives we possibly can. One of the things I'm proudest about our service, and others do this too, is the capability of making sure we do as few false positives as possible. Last year for critical nature, we had none. That's really important. Others can do that too. I just don't know of anybody who's doing it. Why? Because it's hard. It really takes a lot of work to make sure that we're not calling. But that also means that when that vendor who's doing those services for you does call, you need to answer. We need to work on that trust and make sure that they're not flooding us so that we can respond when needed. And that's really important here, because we need the attention to those things to stop that thing, and making it actionable is a requirement. So integrating different threat intelligence methodologies so that we have a good answer, and that answer is compelling.
By the way, if you're a secular customer and you are doing something, an active scanning approach to your attack surface management policy, tell us what IPs you're using for your scanners, please.
Right.
Because we'll ask, hey, is this your Nessus server or whatnot?
Or is this CISA? Right, we need to be aware of those. Yeah.
But it opens that communication channel with your SOC analysts too, and we really love when we see that.
Yeah, and when we talk about this is one that also integrates the things like change control and making sure that we're communicating when we change things or add things to the network with IT, so that they're aware, they can include it, they can put it on the diagram, they can put it on the list of things that need to be patched, and they can scan it. And they can protect it, endpoint protection, et cetera. Really making sure that we're using the process to follow it. And then automation of those processes, then also checking to make sure that automation's good, right? That's really the missing step a lot of times, is we miss that because we think it's covered. We didn't think that somebody would add something and not tell us. So we have to assume they will, and therefore we're looking for it. That's really the difference between attack surface management. And then building in a dashboard and putting it up there so we can see it. This happens to be ours, so we can share it with you. The point is seeing this and understanding it, and being able to look at the alerts. This is what our team looks at 24/7. Our customers don't have to, because our team does. Others would give you that dashboard and you've got to find the resources to look at it. That's okay. It's a good answer. We're just making sure we're doing it. And then making sure that the CISOs and the directors and the others understand the need for these resources to make them safer, because let's be honest, they're going to pay eventually. Rather they pay the good guys than the bad guys, right? And when you go to the paying the bad guys, hopefully never, don't pay the ransom. But if you had to, it's going to cost a lot more than the cleanup would have. I'm sorry, than protecting it beforehand would have.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, the cleanup and all that's more expensive later, rather than being prepared and trying to mitigate the risks. Strong security practices and policies, not just the passwords, right? And I love to talk about passwords yet again, being facetious. The point is, there's a lot of things that we have to do, and having that list and prioritizing it, but making sure we touch all of these is really important. Understand that account management, account security and those aspects, maintaining and testing backups, establishing a patching regimen and sticking to it, even if it's quote unquote air gapped. But maybe that doesn't mean that we are at the current level. Maybe it means we're back a rev or two because we're trusting the vendor to test it and get it to us, right? I'm not saying it has to be 0 day. It has to be up to date every moment if it's in a protected and secure network. But let's watch it if it isn't. Let's make sure that the access is limited.
Most
so we can mitigate that risk.
Most attacks with unpatched systems are 90 days or older, out of date.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I'm not to say all of them are, but the vast majority are.
And there are ways to protect those until we can get to them, but make sure that we're keeping them only 90 days out, right? Whatever that window is, we want to make sure that we're not leaving it for years and years.
I like every 2 weeks at least.
Yeah, that would be great in the perfect world. User encryption, use encryption whenever possible. Let's always use it, and let's stop saying that we cannot use things that are unencrypted, whether it's CGIS or HIPAA or simply them listening and getting our passwords, right? Let's make sure we're doing it. Establish and limiting your bring your own devices policy. Absolutely required now, because if you don't tell them they can't plug it in, they're going to, right? So that's the assumption. And then we got to plan for when they do anyway, back to practicing all of the above and pulling out the incident response plan. Establishing security monitoring and testing protocols. Okay, so what we're saying here is thou must monitor. And not just because we're a monitoring company. We're saying we need to have an independent third set of eyes, so says NIST, look over our shoulder and make sure we're doing things right. This is required now. We can't just pretend that we thought of everything and we're perfect and we don't need help. We all need help. And our job is to work as that extension. All of the job here is to work comprehensively together to help. And that's the way it should be. That having that collaboration between you and your services and your providers and your vendors and your IT team and your folks, right? Because we want them to, everybody has to work together. It's a shared responsibility model. That's really where we moved it. Penetration testing provides an unbiased third-party feedback. I have qualms about pen testing, and we did a webinar on that. The point is understanding that and making sure that if you're going to do it, let's make sure that they can tell us the truth. Don't tie their hands before they begin, because then we find out not everything we need to know, right? We're hiding from the truth. Hardened email systems, and many attacks have come through our email systems in the past, present, and will do so in the future. That's just the way it is. Why? Because we communicate a lot of things to a lot of people, and things like links, et cetera. This is
email continues to be a very large part of your attack surface. You know, phishing attempts and phishing successes do still make up most of the inception point for ransomware.
And there's some things that we can do now, protocols based on that. SPF, sender policy frameworks. In other words, we only accept X from X, right? We're just not open to everything anymore.
Yeah, these three, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, are very common. Your IT guy will know what these mean. Just make sure that you are using them properly.
Absolutely, that's a good point. Yeah, and that gets us really to the next level. Understanding compliance. What is required at the state level? Can we run TikTok anymore? Well, not in 30 states and not nationally soon. Or did that pass already? I don't know. Did they do the ban? I think they did. I think it got passed. The point is understanding that means we shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
Right? That's the big deal. Or if we say no Facebook on this segment and we make it available on the guest segment, then we need to tell everybody it should only be on the guest segment, right? The policy needs to follow the compliance requirements so that we're better protected. I'm not saying dump Facebook. It might actually have good use in the CAD or to the detectives, or, you know, there are uses of it that make sense. CAD, by the way, computer-aided dispatch. So really understanding where we go and really managing this process is the job. And then work with third parties, because we can't think of everything. We do need experts to guide us, experts to help us, experts when it happens, right? Not if, but when, so that we can do and mitigate the risk and make sure it doesn't happen again, right? Not on my watch. So really understanding it and finding the right ones, really important. We're glad to help with that and make some recommendations in that way. Assist in creating event management with them, right? So that what do they do if? right? And then you guys work together. Do I call you? Do you call me? Who do we call? What is your 24/7 number, right? Even though you're the HVAC system. We want to understand what happens in a cyber thing. When a cyber thing happens, how do we do it? Too many organizations are unprepared. Absolutely true. And that number is like 84%. That's a bad number. We can address that together. We can get there. And you guys listening today is a huge component of